This is going to be very interesting. We have some super talented people here. 3 women, 1 person is missing. He's a great strategist when it comes to energy and ESG. But a little about myself. I'm an investment advisor. I've done a lot of tech investing and energy investing. I also have a startup which Optima Process Systems, and we basically look to use process systems to improve environmental outcomes. What's interesting to me from the investment management standpoint is over the last year or two, particularly after the Ukraine, it seems as if there have been some policy errors as it relates to ESG and the complete efforts to shut down fossil fuels to the point where there are some economic ramifications that are pretty severe. And certainly I would suggest that the Ukraine invasion is driven in part by energy. But, and you've had some smart people like Peter Thiel say, ESG is evil. So what Marty and I have been going back and forth is, where are going to, there's a real opportunity here. There need to be new growth leaders going forward, and we're in that period. And what our hope is, in having our panel today, is to identify where the growth areas are and get particular examples. I'll go through the introductions. We have Hanna Merk, Sophie Lamparter, and Dr. Melanie Clarance, who I believe is showing up as Jean Massey, and is in Thailand. And by the way,
No, this is Jean Massey. I'm just observing. I'm another panelist in another group.
Okay. Well,
Sorry.
Melanie should be on in a second. But what we'll do is we're going to start with Hanna Merk. She very bright, brown, economics, engineering, grad degree. She is working in an area called regenerative forestry. And this is really fascinating because we've had a problem with greenwashing and people promising to deliver a viable, real solution. And this is precisely where she is focused. And without any further ado, I'm going to have Hanna speak for 10 minutes on that. And then there is Melanie Clarance. And Melanie has 3 particular companies, and Sophie Lamparter has great skills at working with Swiss and European companies and bringing them to the US, which parallels actually a small project that Optima is doing, working with some Helsinki startups and government entities providing a lot of cash, which we also want to help to globalize. So Hanna, please improve on your bio and tell us about, the significant potential behind regenerative forestry and what you're looking at doing. You've got
Thank you, Tyson. Thank you for the very kind introduction. And apologies beforehand. I'm talking about forestry and it sounds like my neighbors are logging in the background, and it wasn't planned. It's just gardeners. Gardeners, huh? Ours are done, but the neighbors have started. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to the other side of the world. And I'm happy to have met some of the people who are in person in San Francisco. I met you for dinner last night, so that was fantastic. Wonderful conference, wonderful panel before ours, so great content. So let me jump though, because time is of the essence. So let me jump right into the forestry idea and how this connects to the ESG topic, which is a very important and hot topic. But I'll first start by defining this kind of the monstrous sounding word of regenerative forestry. It's really very simple. It is trees. So we are talking about a combination of sustainable forestry, which is the existing forests, managing them properly, biodiverse way, but also making income out of them. And then combining that with reforestation, so reforesting lands that have been previously deforested. So it's that simple. The word sounds big, it's just nice. Regenerative forestry is sustainable forestry plus reforestation. And why is this, how this links to the ESG topic that we are supposed to talk about? So there are several big themes in ESG, and I just picked 2 that are like on top of mind to many of us. And one of it is that the companies, they have made huge promises. Maybe they have overpromised to reduce their carbon footprint. And now it's the time when they actually have to deliver on those promises they made. So that's a company side. And then as an investor, investors are getting more savvy. They're understanding the difference between genuine reductions in carbon levels and then, just greenwashing things. So we need to be super careful in, as an investor, we are suspicious when people are just talking about credits. And the regenerative forestry can possibly answer both of these issues because it's a tangible way for companies to show. You can literally go and count those trees. Satellite images will tell you at the start. So it's a very tangible way for companies to invest and prove that they are doing good on this. And on the other side, for the investors, trees actually are quite magical. They capture carbon. This gets a little bit in the chemistry. They capture CO2 from the atmosphere. They breathe out oxygen, and they use the C part to build the core of the tree. So as tree grows, it actually captures carbon. It's magical. So the sustainable forestry part. So this is, think about just good, proper management of forests. That maximizes the carbon capture of an existing forest. So sometimes people are thinking, well, logging is bad. Well, it's bad if you don't replant those trees, but actually the tree captures most of its carbon while it's growing, like people, as you're growing, you need more calories. And as you get older, you need less and less. So the way to maximize the forest's work in creating oxygen is actually to manage that forest. And as trees mature, you will take away dead trees, you will take away all the mature trees, and you will plant new ones to regenerate a biodiverse forest. So you're actually just increasing throughput by managing that. So that is a really important thing to understand. And at the same time, if we look at the entire world and all the areas that have been unfortunately deforested, now there is the big upside. That's going to be the uptick, is reforesting those areas. It has been considered the largest potential nature-based carbon abatement model. This is based on Barclay's research. It's based on the global tree restoration potential. It's Davos was all about it. And there are lots of scientific proof that this is the potential. So if you combine those two things, it's managing the existing forest where you can get income, and then you invest some of that income into the reforestation of the deforested areas. You have literally money growing on trees.
That's
Do you want me
great.
to have a little more time, or can I?
Let me be clear. Sorry. Yes, you have 4 minutes. Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah, I'd love to take some questions. And while some questions are coming in, I'm going to, I'll talk about the size of the market, because people are always interested, well, is this really going to make an impact? Is there size to this? So just some numbers to throw at everybody. The forestry and logging market is about 540 billion currently. So that's just a size. But the carbon credit market is expected to go to 1.5 trillion. And those carbon credits have to come from somewhere. So here is the idea, is that currently we're looking at forest valuations based on just the trees that are growing there. If we actually layer on top of that, that the companies need to be investing in this so that they have all of the carbon credits that they need for the future, that's going to completely upend those valuations. So that's where the potential is. And that is how one can make a, let's say, a very bricks and mortar tree business with a very modest revenue base to be actually a much, much more attractive investment business as well, while you're doing good, because you're physically increasing the tree population in the world and therefore taking care of the carbon problem.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? If they're not, I'm sure we'll have more questions later. And what I'd like to do now is go to Dr. Melanie Clarance with Clean Design and OcGrow. And I have been speaking with her, and she has several business opportunities, which I was reading last night, that are really fascinating. One is a type of battery that isn't easily damaged and would cause a fire and can be put on ships, and ships are huge emitters of a variety of things, including carbon, Wi-Fi sensing technology. And she's going to introduce herself briefly and go through those 3 or 4 ideas that really, again, represent really tangible opportunities in the ESG space, or the impact space, as Sophie likes to describe it as. Go ahead, Melanie.
Thank you, Tyson. Listen, I am in Koh Samui and it's midnight here. And for some reason, we've just suddenly experienced bad Wi-Fi. We've had phenomenal Wi-Fi up until now. So if it goes wonky, I will take myself off video. And if it goes really wonky, please just bear with me, and I may have to switch to a different Wi-Fi system, but I'll go through this, if you don't mind, as efficiently and quickly as I can. Good evening, everybody. This is very exciting, and thank you very much. And I should say good morning, I guess, to most of you on the other side of the world. This is a real privilege. So let me just explain. I'm an impact investment specialist, a bit of a rainmaker. It's something that's always been extremely important to me, and mostly just for the good reasons that all of you are probably looking at ESG as to creating a legacy and being able to tell your kids you were part of this. Why do I like it? What do I see in ESG? I see that it adds shareholder value, and it's another lens we can look at, not just EBITDA. I don't believe, however, this idea that $50 trillion, et cetera, like that money just has to be thrown at it. I think you can leverage ESG through innovation without having to spend a lot of money, because I've watched it with the firms I've been representing. So I would encourage anyone on the call who is an investor to consider becoming focused on partnering with these types of companies. And for some reason, on the West Coast of Canada, we have a lot of innovation. I will walk through each one in a minute. I just wanted to say, other than making a profit and making a difference, a little very quick about me. I am a capital raiser, investment banker. I wear 2 hats. I'm a capital raiser, investment banker with a licensed EMD called Liberty North Capital in corporation in Canada. And I'm also a venture partner of a leading Canadian VC. Early days invested in Amazon, Shopify, recently in Heliogen with Bill Gross's company, and in Viome with Naveen Jain, etc. So see a lot of good deal flow, and I only ever try to help companies that are founder led. That's extremely important to me and to the companies I work with. So I just wanted to say something very quickly on ESG. When I think of ESG, I think of fairness. I think of society in the sense of, if you aren't on this call and you are white, or let's put it this way, if you are not white and you are not male and you are not straight and you were not the first one chosen for the basketball team, that will give you some sense of what it feels like not to be included in society. And anyone that falls in those other categories, we already know, so we don't have to discuss that. The next part is the environment. And I think we all want to figure out how to take the carbon from here, this in the atmosphere, and bring it down here where it belongs, in the soil, which was great to Hanna's remarks on regenerative forestry. So I'm going to tell you now about, if I have time, up to 4 companies, very quick highlights.
Yes,
the first one is, thank you. The first one is called Clean Design Income Corporation. And Clean Design is all about recognizing we're going to get there to net zero by 2050 or whatever the magic marker is, but we're not there yet. We're still driving our cars. Some of them are petrol. We're still buying bananas that come in on planes. So how do we hybridize the energy that we have? So what they do, Clean Design, is they use actually marine grade lithium ion batteries. They put them on existing oil rigs that are run by ConocoPhillips and Chevron, etc. And in doing so, they are reducing 150,000 gallons of diesel a year and eliminating about 1,500 tons of carbon that would otherwise have gone to the atmosphere. It's not perfect because it's not complete elimination of fossil fuels by any stretch, but I can tell you that even pre-Ukraine, the gas companies love this and they don't want to give these batteries back. So this company is fascinating. I think you'll find because it also has strong profit potential and strong profits already. It made $1.5 million in its first 18 months. Its run rate is for EBITDA is looking to be at 10 million next year. It's just add capital and stir. They acquired a company that had $58 million in tax losses. So this is run by a previous investment banker. He's a very clever guy. So you got the best of both worlds, ESG, and you get a big dividend. You get an 8 or 9% dividend, and it's even better because it's actually return of capital, which is tax-free. This is again as a private company. The next one is a private company. It is called Terramira. Terramira is along the lines of what Hanna was saying with regenerative, and we didn't know each other before this call, with regenerative forestry. Terramira is all about regenerative farming. The idea is we've screwed up with, I'm from a farm, we've screwed up farming, we've over-tilled, we haven't left things go fallow. We've literally lost 70% of our topsoil in the whole world. And we're going from droughts and floods and because the soil can't absorb the water, yet the soil needs water. It's this spinning that we're doing, and our food, as we all know, is not as nutritionally dense as it was in our parents' day. So we need to fix that. Again, taking carbon from the atmosphere down into the soil. Terramira does it in two ways. One thing they do, they started out making biopesticides. That's not the focus of today's conversation, but of interest. If you go into a forest in India and you look at all the trees, the only tree that will not have pests on it is the neem tree. And Terramira figured out how to stabilize neem and make a biopesticide that will kill anything, bed bugs, ants, any creepy crawlies. But you can literally eat it if you wanted to, but you shouldn't. You could use it on lice and your kids off label, but you know, SC Johnson bought that product and they now have a similar product for crops. They're doing great. But what they've just discovered is the equivalent, my words, to the MRI machine that are used in hospitals, only they're using it for soil. So in a handful of soil, there are more microbes apparently in there than all the people on this planet. Those microbes are essential for the soil to nourish us and for regenerative farming to work, and therefore to get carbon back into the soil. So it's a great company. You should look at it. I can tell you that the Walton family has invested and they're doing another pro rata round through their Seed to Growth company, Dr. Peter Diamandis through Bold Ventures, IKEA, lots of good things. I won't get into much more on their technology, except to say that if you take your camera on your phone and you put it up here, you can see the veins in a table. But if you go closer and closer, you lose the pixelation. Theirs is exactly the opposite. They can go extremely deep and they don't lose any pixelation. And other than that, I'm under NDA. Thank you. Shift Clean Energy. This one is super exciting. Look at this. It is a marine lithium ion battery. Go onto their website, shiftcleanenergy, probably.com. I forget the website, but it will be in the brochures that I left with Marty. And you will see that you can literally put a nail into it and it will kill that one fuel cell, but it does not create fire. It does not create thermal runaway. In other words, it does not create fire on ships. It's being used to electrify ports, the port of Singapore, all sorts of ships. It's a fascinating company, and they have a SaaS model with power swap, where they can swap it out for batteries. So those are three. If I have time for the fourth really quickly, your body is made up. Your body is mostly made up of water, 70% water. When you walk into a room and when Wi-Fi is bouncing around, it bounces off those water molecules. It can create a silhouette. There's no facial recognition, but you can see a person moving through space. So safety, security, burglaralarm.com is involved in this company. You can tell where a burglar is, how many in the room, or even for fire, for firefighters. For security, suddenly an elderly person falls, you can say, hey, someone just fell, they could have broken a hip. Number three, the big one is energy efficiency. You're a hotel owner, building office owner, what have you, and you have to figure out which HVAC you can turn off for the next 2 days because no one's in the room. Does not contravene any privacy concerned, and the company is called NAMI, N-A-M-I, based out of Singapore. As with all these founders, seasoned, have done exits, serial entrepreneurs. I used to work for a Swiss bank called Pictet out of Geneva. Most of you probably have heard of Pictet, fabulous private Swiss bank. And they did the middleware for Pictet and Lamparter, I think, and Von Tobel and all the big major private Swiss banks. So really neat little company. The bottom line is that we can connect with these companies. We can align with ESG. You don't have to give up EBITDA. You don't have to throw a lot of money at it. You just need a lot of innovation. And there's a whole lot of that in the West Coast of Canada.
Thank you. That was tremendous. Let's move on to Sophie. And she has a international network where she's bringing Swiss technology and European technology globally. That was all ESG. She communicated to me that we shouldn't call it ESG, but impact investing. And if you could tell us a little about yourself, why we should call it impact investing and get rid of ESG, and then tell us a little bit more about how what your company does and how it can move impact investing forward. That would be great.
Tyson, can I interrupt just for one quick
Yeah,
second?
go ahead.
Melanie, can you do us a favor and chat the names of the 4 companies you mentioned? And Hanna, can you do something similar of what you talked about earlier? Thanks.
Sure.
Keep on going.
Well, thank you so much, Tyson, Marty. Thank you so much for having me, and very interesting group. I love to hear what you guys are working on. So maybe in a nutshell what we're doing. So I'm originally Swiss, but I've moved to the Bay Area about 11 years ago. First part of my career, I worked for the Swiss government. We have an innovation outpost here. And through that, I started realizing a few things. One is that Europe has a lot to offer in terms of talent and universities and technologies that are being developed. On the other hand, the US has a lot to offer in terms of how to scale, raise funds, and making really, really large companies. So bringing these two worlds together is what made us start Labs. So it's an early stage impact fund with an accelerator. And when we say impact fund, we're investing in 2 verticals, big ones. One is health tech, and the other one is climate. And when we speak about health tech, we look at one very specific trend. It's the convergence of tech and healthcare industry. Basically, many of you probably are already wearing certain wearables. We're collecting more and more data around the human body. There is more and more personalization. There's more and more AI that we can use to make predictions. And we're shifting slowly, I think, from a healthcare industry to an industry where it's around staying healthy rather than treatment afterwards. So one example of a company that we recently invested in that I'm excited about is called Neuro. It's a Swiss company. They're doing a very novel Alzheimer treatment. We all know that any pharma approach to Alzheimer has failed so far, and billions have been invested in the space. So what they're doing is a personalized headset with electrostimulation on the affected brain areas. And then on the other side, in terms of climate investing, we're looking at waste reduction. I think is a very big topic in general. So all over Europe, we already have the first single-use plastic bans, as well as in California. So we will have to come up with alternatives to single-use plastic. And many of the things on the market today are also not quite satisfactory. When we look at bioplastics, many of them have still artificial additives that are not actually compostable. So we are to some extent producing a new type of waste stream. So we're investing in companies that develop technologies that are completely circular economy and completely compostable, for example. One company, also a Swiss example, they're called Fluid Solids. They make a single-use plastic out of natural fiber waste, could be out of coffee waste, could be nutshells, could be wood scraps, and it is home compostable within about 5 weeks, which is very novel technology that they've developed, and they're now ready to scale. And these are the types of founders we're looking for that we can find all over Europe, and then we support them in scaling towards the US market. it is, compared to Europe, still a huge advantage to have a $3 million market in one market. We can't ignore that. Yeah, and why I said I don't necessarily like the word ESG is just because it has been so overused. And I don't know, my financial advisors calls an investment in Amazon ESG, and I'm not sure how that's defined. And then he was telling me, oh, they have some women on the board. And I don't think that's quite enough. If you really want to make a difference, we have to measure the impact that the companies we're investing in have. So we have an impact methodology. We define, okay, how much, let's say in the plastic example, how much single-use plastic can be reduced to this new product, what is really compostable, what is really most energy efficient, how much CO2 can be saved through this new product, and so forth. So we really need to, the same way we're measuring profits and returns, the same way we should also measure impacts.
Great. 3 very compelling women speakers with tremendous companies. Do we have some questions? Melanie, it looks like you have your names up there. Hanna.
Tyson, I sent you a couple
Go
of
ahead.
questions, and also Angela Atherton has a question on the Q&A
You sent me questions? I'll look for them. Go ahead.
through the chat. And Angela Atherton, she says she wants to know, this might not be applicable to everybody, where does the S or social of ESG factor into the investment process? And what's the relevance of gender or diversity?
Well, I'm not the expert. Go ahead, Sophie.
I can speak a little bit about that. I mean, in terms of venture capital, the numbers in, for example, gender diversity is pretty desperate. So I think about 2.3% of all venture capital goes towards female founders, which is absolutely frustrating. And when you look at the data, how successful female founders are, they're actually mostly more successful than males. So there's definitely a shift that is needed to be done. A lot of VCs tell us it's hard for them to find enough female founders. We are 2 women running this fund. I mean, we have 3 partners, 2 women, 1 male. We don't have a problem at all. So I think it's very much around where does the money come from, where the decisions are made. So we have a lot of female founders contacting us. Currently in our portfolio, we have about a third female CEOs and 50% mixed teams. And it's not that, of course, we're looking for this as well, but it's not that we're making this part of our selection. It's really, I think, automatically, because we are a diverse team as fund managers, the people who come into us are also diverse. So that in terms of gender diversity.
If I can piggyback on that. So
Yeah.
excellent comments on that. And I can definitely in the VC space second that. And unfortunately, there's still kind of trend that venture-backed companies, the funds they're looking at and say, oh, we already have 1 female founder. We don't need another one. So if they think that they kind of tick the box that they are supporting 1 women-founded company and they don't need another one. So that's a sad thing that has to change. But then there's some other excellent backers who actually are making it a point of focus. They have seen what you're talking about, Sophie, that the few women that actually are able to get there, they are darn good. And they have gone through the ringer so many times that they actually a very, very good bet. Statistically speaking, those are the ones to back. So that's one side of it. The other thing is we really need to work on the pipeline. Having the pipeline of women, supporting women studying science and starting and daring to fail. The expectations we have of women are, that's part of the problem. So we need to start with the pipeline. So the pipeline is stronger, and then it's easy to have more volume on the top. So that's one point, just from the VC side. But then I wanted to talk about how certain companies, are they allocating to they're choosing which stocks to buy. So that's where you can use actual metrics and look at, well, how many women do they have in their management pipeline? How many do they have on the board, and so on? So those are things from the investor side where you can force things and say, we expect you to have these things. So please start working on them. So there is movement and momentum there, but we are nowhere near there. So that's just the gender, and you can do that about all the other areas of diversity, of expecting companies to do better are in investing in diversity. And similarly then on the environmental side, I mean, yes, there are things you can measure. You can have a scorecard expecting that this is what we only invest in companies that do X, Y, and Z. And then, you know, just, I guess, promoting the forestry one more time, that is one of the really easy things to do, because we're not talking cryptocurrency here. We're talking actual trees that grow in forests, very easy to count. So that's another way how you can make that, build that into being part of a company's mission. We do good by not emitting carbon, but we also do good by planting trees. And you can say X many trees over X years. And that's really easy to track, and it's simple and straightforward and good for everyone. So that's my short answer.
Hey, Tyson, I just want to give my 2 cents on this topic. So I'm going to tell you that the number of women employed is a false metric. And the only metric that is meaningful is the total compensation for women. And if you think about it, that really solves everything. Same thing with diversity. You can go to a bank and there are hundreds of diverse bank tellers, but none of them, their total compensation is far less than the bank executive compensation in aggregate, having worked with many banks as my clients in the past. So anyway, food for thought. I think we have some questions from the audience. So did you have a question?
Yeah, there's about the carbon credits in the tree impact investing. There's a company built using blockchain technology. It's called Flow Carbon. I don't know if you've heard of them. They raised like $70 million for the K16Z, Samsung Next.
So there's a blockchain company named Flow Carbon that's raised $70 million from Anderson Horowitz. And what do they do? They're involved in carbon credits?
Yeah, so they're creating like artificial carbon market that will expire.
So they have a expiring artificial carbon market. Have you guys ever heard of this?
Hannah?
People in the
I
audience have
have,
heard
and
of it. How about the
that's it.
speakers?
Yeah, thank you. So I have, and it's a new space, and it's a good space, and it's an important instrument to have. I'm just a proponent of not using that alone, because then we're just trading credits. I'm a proponent of actually having forests that you sustainably manage, and then taking part of that profit to plant new forests. And yes, of course, you need to monetize the credits that you get from that as well. But that to me is the add-on that is the monetizing part, but that does not solve the carbon problem. We need to be having forests, managing forests, and growing new forests. And then, yeah, we can let a credit overlay on top of that. And that's going to be, yep, a nice, interesting way of making money. But you need to do good and make the good make money, not just play with credit.
Yeah,
And
Hannah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. It makes total sense. There's another question here, Gary.
Yeah, so we had that discussion in the public company where we're at, Sophie company, and we had resources, ESG type people support. So they wanted to plant some trees close to Riga or something. And this is during the pandemic, and I said, look, you guys all have acre houses in Athens, go plant some trees there. We'll plant already. I said, what is critical is we are a San Francisco company, we've been a San Francisco company for the entire 30 years of our existence. Let's go take a look at these low-income kids who can't learn on Zoom and go give them a voucher for either, a tutor or a private school to go there. So I think what happens is that for the first thing to do is take care of your community. And that's more impactful, even kids. Yeah, so I think that there's too many people that just have broad brush plant a tree. But I think it's more important to say what in your local community is important. And in the 2 years that we had this teachers not teaching, maybe they're still Zoom today. We need to get these poor, underprivileged kids that have lost 2 years of education. And so that's where you want to, that's the future of the country. company.
So just, I'm going to synopsize here. Because Gary Saka's talking half the time, it's a joke with him. So I'm going to be really serious. So to be concise, ESG should also include the underprivileged, number one. Number two, focus on local is important versus global, because you can really make improvements and changes to your local community doing that. And that's kind of like an old school corporate outlook, right? Back in the days when, corporations would drive not-for-profit events and stuff like that. Used to always happen back in the day. So Gary's saying, from a social point of view, what about local? Do you guys consider that in your investments?
Well, the UN Sustainability Charter says end poverty and feed. Those are number 1 and 2, and with that provide electricity. And you want to move up education. Those are definitely within the whole UN Charter and broadly discussed. And how there are so many things to do and so much money and so much time, but those are not the reality he's talking about. Is true, but we can't solve everything here today.
So just and again, I 100% agree with Gary's perspective. That's why the not-for-profits that I'm on the boards of, which are Working Nation, which is the purpose is to teach people about the up-and-coming jobs that will exist in the future, and so many jobs are always being destroyed, et cetera. So that's a Working Nation based out of Los Angeles. And then number 2, Connect Our Kids. And one of the reasons why I highly support Connect Our Kids is that, and it's actually, even though it's a national organization, it's very local for Californians, right? So Connect Our Kids helps foster children find their families. And many times you'll have a situation where a child is born, put into foster care. They don't, and the father doesn't know the child was born. Number 1. Number 2, child was put into foster care because the mother had problems with drugs, whatever. The rest of the family isn't notified. A grandparent wants to adopt the kid, or some other relative wants to adopt the kid, but they have no idea where the kid is, right? So Connect Our Kids has technology that does that. Why is it relevant to California? Because Los Angeles has 10% of all the foster kids in the United States, all right? And California has roughly 20% of all the foster kids in the United States. So these are things where you can make an impact. And by the way, if you want to join the executive committee, you should reach out to me, because you can make an impact today on a project that's short-lived and will make impact by spreading this technology for free to many people. It's a state-of-the-art visualization tool which helps foster kids, right? And the cost of foster kids to this country, to each state, is enumerated by, there's a social worker infrastructure, there's an overseer, a legal overseer on top of the social worker, and there's also a payment that goes to the foster parents, and that all adds up to thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars a year. The litigation system for foster kids costs tens of thousands of dollars to work through, and if foster kids are never adopted, they will have terrible things happen in their lives. The pregnancy rate for girls who come out of foster care who are never adopted is something like 60% by the time they're 20. So that feeds right back into Gary Saka's worldview. It feeds into my worldview, which is that you can make an impact today, and it's not for a lot of money. It's something like $10 per foster kid in the country to make this thing work. There's 400,000 foster kids, right? Anyway, I'll get off my monologue, and you guys can keep on going.
No, Marty, that was really, really lovely. And I think all of us have the same sentiment, is that it's important to do good, and we can't do everything. So just do something. And obviously doing something local is a very natural way to start. I'm a Rotarian, so, think global, act local, works perfectly for me. There's another mantra I go by, which is do what you passionate about and do what you know, because I think the previous speakers talked about, opening your Rolodex, doing what you have knowledge, and that's where you can have an impact on. And, I have 4 children myself. So children are, for example, for me, the thing, how I can both model behavior to my children of what's important, and I can help children. So what I personally do, I run a nonprofit on the side I'm also a horseback rider, so I do a therapeutic riding program for children with disabilities. That's my way of locally doing something, having an impact on each of those children's lives. So, and that doesn't cost me any money, it just costs me time. And in addition, I'm investing and supporting young women's tech projects. Okay, so those are the things how I directly connect to what's happening here locally, how I hopefully pave the way for my 4 children to see how mom does it. Okay, so these are little things that we can do. And Marty, the organization, I was able to meet the founders yesterday for the Connecting the Foster Children with Families. I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful way of technology making a huge difference in the world, making a process more efficient. And isn't that the best way to use technology? So
Absolutely right, and it's a giveaway of technology that's just going to help people whose lives otherwise may not be very enriched for all their future. Anyway, keep on going, guys. I think we've got about 5 minutes left, and I had asked Tyson a question about what's the rigor that you guys have, and how do you get your deal flow? Does it come in network from people that you know, or does it come from out of network? Like what percent, if you can divvy it up? So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Go ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, I thought about that question. It was amazing when actually it comes from, it just shows up, but it comes from everywhere now because I've got so many repeat, many of those I've spoken to you about on even those 4, I think 3 of them are repeat clients, but it comes from family offices, high net worth accountants, lawyers. It comes from my husband, a retired dentist. It's funny. Soon as people know what you stand for, it's kind of something like Hanna was saying, then you draw them in.
So what percent come from an email that like in the last year? It sounds like 75% come in network at least. What percent come from what percent come from a blind email? What percent come from a LinkedIn outreach versus people that you know, or people that you don't know, right?
If I can't even tell you how many on the sell side, I can tell you that I get a lot of emails. Now that I'm on the buy side, it's insane. But but very few of those become real. Some do. It's mostly almost always referral. The more I think about it, I'd have to. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, we started this group more than 20 years ago. So again, it was a Wharton group of guys investing directly in private equity. And then the Wharton Angel Network and the Ivy Family Office Network. We had a hedge fund and private equity network as well. When we started it, about 10% of our deal flow was internal because we were brand new. But within a year, it was 50%. And today it's 90% come from internal references. So keep on going.
Sophie?
Same here. I mean, we have started building a reputation to be a good investor among founders, and they speak to each other. And I think that's the most important thing, that you as an investor also add value in addition to just the investment, and that will spread quickly. So we get I would say 90% of the investments we're making is personal connections. And as well on the investor side, our LP base, like most of our investors have brought in additional investors, and they keep doing that. So I think most important is, know what you're doing, have a clear investment thesis so people understand what to send to you and how to approach you, and then make sure that you're really adding value on the founder side as well as on the investor side. And then I think it just keeps growing naturally. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do Marty a favor here and say that I presented here several years ago. One of the people that I met was Harry Edelman, and Harry has 11 unicorns, one of the best East Coast VCs, and he advises our firm, not actively because we're not doing a lot, but he's been around the block many times, probably worth $1 billion, and his comment to me is, kid, you got to get out there. I mean, the reality of it is, what you girls, ladies, doctors, just did were lay out a lot of really compelling ideas when I'm reading all this stuff about greenwashing. And, if people don't know about it, you're not going to make the connections. But as an investment advisor, all my, or the large part of what I get is all, somebody smart referred somebody else, I made them money, and that's generally how it happens. People feel comfortable, but you got to be out there and you got to be telling your story. So Marty, thank you for the opportunity. Any final words from the brilliant women on this panel?
Closing remarks, please. By the way, Sophie, I lived in Switzerland for a long time. They're probably some of the physically healthiest people in the world. I'm not sure about psychologically. Who knows? Whoever knows what's behind the cover. But it's a great place. Really, they have a very healthy lifestyle, and I highly recommend it.
True.
I just wanted to thank everyone, and it's an honor, and to be surrounded with these women, I've got to say, it's fantastic. I come from the world of medicine first, and so we sort of have equal opportunities in medicine now that still aren't in the business workplace, and it always stuns me. So thank you for being such a support system, Marty and Tyson. Wonderful. We can only get to there, like as they say, the she needs the he to get to the we. We get up the glass ceiling.
Yeah, but it is so doable, and I grew up in Finland, so I'm part of the European contingency here. I grew up in the forest myself, and there's a country where you have a party prime minister who's a woman, and the country is doing just well. So women can obviously do it, no question about it. And I'm glad to be part of the movement to making that happen, while making the world a better place and a greener place, for real. So
Yeah,
thank you very much. Very exciting.
Thank you so much. And maybe we could do a shout out for more female investors. I think the real change will happen when more women will make decisions where the money goes. And so more women daring to start doing a first angel investment or investing through a fund or accelerators. Just get started.
There's a Canadian woman that's doing that, and I don't know her well, but the company's called The 51. You can put it in The 51.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.